This is Friday Night Shudder, and on this episode, we will not be reviewing a weekly recap of a Shudder movie. No, this week's going to be something different, because I realised that we've hit 10 episodes overall, including the Limitless ones and the bottle episodes, and I thought, you know what? 11 episodes, that's the milestone. Not 10 episodes, 11 episodes. It's a milestone, and figured since I never actually did an introduction explaining who I am or what this podcast is, that the 11th episode is the time to do it. So on the 8th weekly episode and the 11th episode overall, I am going in history on my history with horror movies. This is Friday Night Shudder 101, and it begins in a few seconds. So where to begin? I guess best place for me to begin personally would be with when I was a teenager growing up in the lovely town of the Shire in Buckinghamshire. And I used to frequent a video shop across the road from many of shops called Apollo Video. It's not around anymore. It was only around for a few years where I live, but it was a great video store. It's like a kind of pseudo-independent one, I think. Maybe a small ma and pa chain, but yeah, best selection of horror movies I've ever seen, and even to this day. And I remember at the time I was about 13, 14 I guess, and couldn't legally watch any of these horror movies, but I was interested, so I would go in there every day. And this is an example of how I was a trend-setting, jet-riding kid. I was really on cusp of society's foibles. I used to go in there and I used to read all boxes of horror movies, and that's how I got introduced to franchises like Child's Play and Friday the 13th and Halloween, not by watching movies but by reading about them. I'm quite a voracious reader too, by the way, mostly comic books, but you know, magazines and stuff like that too, and the occasional book. And I just fell in love with horror movies through the mythos, really. The sort of the backstory, the history, if you will, the mythology really is what I'm getting at. Because I'd read all of the bats of movies, and it sounded incredible. It's like you would read Friday 13th, and one of the movies would be about Jason's niece who had telekinetic powers, and you'd be like, holy shit, that sounds amazing. And being someone who, when I was 13, I got into writing quite big. I was doing an English essay, and we were asked exam or essay or something like that, and we were asked to write a story about time travel, and I wrote a very convoluted story about time travel with homages to Terminator 2 and the Drano bleach syringe, because that me is the coolest thing ever at the time, which was kind of weird, but still pretty cool, so it's okay. And I was writing and reading about all this history of these characters on back boxes. I mean, when you're just reading back, you're getting the press, the sort of idea studio wants to put out. It's not necessarily what the movie's about. It's about what the studio and PR people want you to think the movie's about, the best way to sell it. And they're selling the shit out of these movies to me. Like, you read on the back of Child's Play 2, for example. No, Child's Play 3, and you find out Andy's in the military now. You're like, holy shit. This is a wide-reaching story. This is epic as shit. And you're so pumped to watch it. But you can't, because at the time I was too young, and, you know, it's what it is. And then you finally watch it years later. It's like, this is not what Back of the Box promised me. I think that's something a lot of horror fans feel, is that the hype for a lot of these movies is better than the actual movie. I'm jumping forward a long time now. This was when I was 13, so it would be about, 20 years ago. So it'd be like 98, 99, I guess? Strange. Everyone was fixated on Matrix, and I was fixated on, wait, how awesome would it be to watch this movie where Andy Barclay, a character I've never seen before, but has clearly grown over this trilogy, is in military school, and fucking Chucky's after him. That sounds like the best thing ever to me at the time. I don't give a shit. Matrix, like, your bullet time, no. I want to see Andy Barclay at fucking military school. No? fuck rest of it. That's my shit. That's my jam. No. And then later on watched it. Like say, you watch these movies and they're not quite as good as you remember them being, or rather imagine them being, but they are very watchable. It's just, selling it. But that's like my real formation in horror movies. And I think it gave me a lifelong love of genre because I had positive memories from the start. And that obviously carries you through a lot of shit. I mean, I fell in love with the idea of them before I saw them. So the execution maybe wasn't perfect, but I still had that indebted Inception style love of them based on Apollo video. So I'll always be thankful for Apollo for getting me into them to this extent. It's sad that they shut down before I could actually rent any of these damn movies, but there you go. Actually, no, go back further. I saw Batman Returns before that. Quite a lot before that, actually. I think it was one of the first people I knew who saw it. And actually, that's more a comic book thing, but there's a lot of horror elements in it, like the suicide bombers and stuff like that. And I know a lot of kids probably have been spooked out by that, and it's a really dark, really disturbing movie, but for me, I loved it. I thought it was the perfect blend of horror and superhero stuff, which hasn't really been done since then to the extent it should be. I mean, if you got something like Tim Burton doing a Incredible Hulk movie, I think you'd get a really visceral, terrifying. I mean, Tim Burton's not what he was, but I still think you'd get a really terrifying, visceral feel to the movie, or even something like David Cronenberg. But they don't hire horror people to make Hulk movies for some reason. Close they got was Ang Lee, who, to my dying day, I'll say he fucking nailed an Ang Lee Hulk movie. Unfortunately, it wasn't what people wanted, but then again, who gives a shit? People didn't go out in droves to see Scott Pilgrim vs. the Weird, but that's still a fucking awesome movie. So, back to this. So from there, I guess I would go into Apollo Video a lot because I was I was happy. I was reasonably happy as a kid, but I mean, I just love horror movies and it's something to do. Next big horror milestone for me was watching Evil Dead 2. I don't know whether I should admit this really, but I watched that before I was 18 around a friend's house, and it was one of the best movie experiences I have had. Because Evil Dead 2 is a great movie, because it's a sequel, but doesn't really need you to watch Evil Dead. You should watch Evil Dead before you watch Evil Dead 2, but you don't need to, because essentially same continuity. It's continuity of Bruce Campbell, but otherwise, they redo the intro anyway. Which they did for Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 3. And I'm sure they did for Evil Dead, Ash vs. Evil Dead, because it's the rights are owned. Like, Sam Raimi and co own the rights to characters, they don't own rights to each individual movie, except for Evil Dead 3. I think they own those rights. Just don't know, go watch Ash vs. Evil Dead at some point. It's difficult, because it's a Virgin exclusive in this country on streaming. I don't have Virgin. So I know people do, but I don't have it. So. But Evil Dead 2 was transformative as shit. I mean, this was just a movie made by people having fun. And this was like a direct inspiration to me at the time, being like, this is just literally a goddamn great director, a good actor, but two friends just having fun. They got budget, they got all of this shit, but they're just having fun, and so visceral and so fun to watch, and just literally mind-blowing. I mean, it's crazy, it's chaotic, it had real energy to it, and it just... I think that more than anything made me want to be a scriptwriter. I mean, I was already writing scripts. No, I wasn't. I was writing stories. I wasn't writing scripts after I saw Evil Dead. It was a 1-2 punch, actually, of Evil Dead 2 and Reservoir Dogs. Evil Dead 2 was it's so much fun, and it's just... I can watch it anytime. I haven't watched it in ages, actually, unfortunately, but it's just such a good horror movie. It's so much fun to watch, an absolute blast. And I also know some people who are really good friends who are really into it, which is nice, because, shared experiences and bonding and all that shit. From there, I guess I drifted away from horror a bit after that, really, because when I was about 15, I was getting into like watching movies as I think lots of people are into watching movies recreationally, but as a social activity, which is great. I love seeing movies with people. I think it's a completely different experience, and nothing tops being in cinema. Like when I went to see Avengers Infinity War, and I was in cinema for people, and the first time you need to be in that experience, because fucking hell. I won't go into spoilers, but that is the ultimate audience movie, because people are losing their shit, but they're even losing their shit justly. So some stuff you need to see in the cinema. And I find that at the moment I have Netflix, Shudder, and Amazon Prime. I'm probably not mentioning that because this is a Shudder themed podcast, but I have access to all three of those stream services. I have Now TV, I have YouTube, I have a Blu-ray player, DVD player, and I have an OG Limitless card, as you guys know, because some of you watched the Venom review. And there'll be more reviews coming as more movies come out. And I just love watching movies. Literally, it's so much fun. And around time 15, 16 is when I discovered Kevin Smith movies, specifically Mallrats and Chasing Amy. And that 1-2 punch fucking knocked me for six, because Mallrats was pretty much it's the personification of what being a teenager and late teenager is like at that point. It just completely exemplified it. That attitude, hang out in malls, and I know it's an exaggeration, but it fucking nailed that aesthetic completely, and was also a really entertaining movie. And to this day, I tend to go for Dogma as my favourite Kevin Smith movie, because I really think, although it misses the mark on a fair bit, I think it's brave as shit, and I think it's close to Kevin Smith got to making something that was art, that said something about society as a whole. But Mallrats and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back are just so much fun. They're so goofy, they're so silly, and they're not most visually brilliant movies ever made, but at the same time, it's just when Kevin Smith was just on top, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't give shit that Mallrats failed at the box office. For me, it's one up there of the best teen classic movies. It's like a vulgar John Hughes movie, because it really does have a heart, and it's really a nice movie. But Chasing Amy, oh Jesus. So, Chasing Amy is one of the few movies, and it was so good, I actually sent Kevin Smith on his the viewer ski board. This was before the Smodcast podcast. I actually sent him, because he used to do Q&As on there, and I wasn't asking questions, I was like, dude, I fucking love Chasing Amy, and just saying how I related to, in different ways, all characters, because I think everyone does, and got a really nice reply from him. And although I'm not a huge fan of these late movies, I have nothing but time for Kevin Smith now. I think once you get over he could have been, because he did Superman Lives script and he's going to do Green Hornet, now he could have, and I maintain, if he wanted it, he could have been huge, but I don't think he wanted it. It's fine, not everyone has to, but in some ways it's a shame that somebody's, because it's Green Hornet comic, I think it's like based on his script, or he actually co-wrote it. It was pretty good, and his Daredevil, bit problematic, but at the same time, it's a really good fucking comic. And some of his other comics are good too. And Clerks 2 script is really good. The movie, but the script's really good. And Superman Lives is a great script. They really should. I do think they should just use that for one of Superman movies. Just what's wrong with using old scripts? You know, just using old script that's got good quality. I mean, George Romero, God rest his soul, left behind 50 scripts apparently. You know, his wife is trying to say, and I'm like, why would you not direct the George Romero script? For all his faults, for all his later movies not being as good as his older movies, there's this guy whose entire opening part of Dawn of the Dead is literally one of the best introductions to any movie flat out ever made. It's just people reading news and the madness going on in a news studio, but the writing is so fucking sharp and brilliant and powerful, and it feels natural. And I don't know how you write something like that. I didn't know how you'd write something like that, but it's perfect. So, and all the subtext and that, he is a goddamn good writer, and I would actually, I would in a heartbeat direct anything that man wrote, and I can't see why other people wouldn't jump at it. It's ridiculous. I mean, his wife deserves a big paycheck for each script sold, rightly so, but I don't understand why studios wouldn't pick those up straight away. Like Shudder, if you guys are listening, get in the George Romero business. Buy a bunch of his scripts and put stuff on your stream network. I guarantee you, at very least, you would have a bunch of very, very, very watchable movies with great scripts. At very least. I mean, even if they're not best scripts on the planet, I don't want to speak illusions about Shudder, because I think they are some of the nicest people I've met on social media, and they've been nothing but spoiled about this movie, about this podcast, which they could shut this down in a second if they want to. They haven't. Fucking lovely bunch of people. But you can't say with a straight face that George Romero's scripts wouldn't be in the bare minimum in the middle of your catalogue movies. Because, guys, you got some gloriously rubbish stuff on your streaming app. And that's fine. Not everything's winger. Island of Death is a piece of shit, rubbish, offensive horror movie. And that's on service, and I accept that, and I'm fine with that. I have no problems with that. But Island of Death and Honeymoon are terrible movies, and anything by Romero, anything Romero's fingerprints on it is going to be better than that. So Shudder, get on that. I'm off my soapbox, and I'm going back to my point. So those movies pushed me real into the idea of like I love movies, and really love watching them, and I love all movies and weird movies and independent movies and all that stuff. Because at the time, like, Chasing Amy was known. I won't say it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's particularly mainstream, because it's quite a low budget. Mallrats box office. Kevin Smith was still an underground director of point. Nowadays he won't be. You get guys like Wes Anderson and Rian Johnson, whose movies come out and they're pushed so heavily that they're big names within a few years. I mean, just look at Ryan Coogler made Black Panther, and within a couple of his opening movies, like I think Fruitvale Station, first movie, then it's Creed, then it's Black Panther. It's like, you don't. It's great. They should be thrown at the top because these guys are goddamn great directors. But at the same time, back in the day, you had to ease your way up. In theory, Kevin Smith got more money than Mallrats, but it wasn't exactly a high-budget movie like Creed. And not saying Kevin Smith is at Ryan Coogler's level, or was, although I think he's fantastic. I'm just saying that the Superman push is a new thing as far as I know. Anyway, so Reservoir Dogs really got me writing scripts, because I wrote a terrible script called Criminal Intent. This was for Law and Order. I also wrote a script called Twilight Saga about a superhero before Twilight books came out, so I can't say that anymore. But it's a really terrible script, but writing it was so much fun. And I know you're probably thinking at this point, what's this have to do with horror movies? Well, making a weekly podcast is essentially like making a TV show. And I sure shit wasn't going to be comfortable writing a TV show style content until I'd had that experience writing a movie script. You write a movie script, that's your introduction, and then you start writing TV style scripts. And then as I got to 2003, I was writing weekly scripts online for virtual series, which basically an unproduced TV series sort of thing. It's like a continuing series with just the scripts. And okay, I bombed at that a few times, because doing that weekly is very taxing, and I was very young at the time. I wasn't mature enough to handle it. But But those experiences got me through to making this podcast, and now I've made fucking 8. This is my 8th weekly episode, and overall, this is my 11th episode. And this first went up in... Shit, it's not been 8... Yeah, and I started this 8 weeks ago. So, as far as I'm concerned, I have fucking redeemed myself. Yeah, I've redeemed myself, so that's good. From my experiences of being younger, because you put a lot of stress on yourself when you're that young to make content. In some ways, you've got the energy to do it, but not maturity. Anyway, back to what I was trying to get back to. So, around 15, 16, I really got into watching these independent movies, and then I found out that my maths teacher at school, Miss Halbert, was had launched a film cinema studies to A level. So I was like, I gotta get into this. So I applied for that, and what followed was 2 of my favourite movie watching years ever. It's kind of weird to explain, really, because you see these people in movies and TV shows, these teachers who inspire people, and you think that's not real life. Where Mrs. Halbert was like, unbelievable teacher. The movies that she inspired us to watch, she pulled F1 class out of their element and got us watching movies by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, Wong Kar-wai, David Cronenberg, David Lynch. We were introduced to movies far beyond the Hollywood sphere. We even saw stuff like Aaron Brockovich, which was by Steven Soderbergh, who I'd later find out was an independent director of renown. And we'd watch movies like those and then be told, this is by an independent director who's making a Hollywood movie, but these are independent movies made by independent directors, not for Hollywood, for an independent market. And that's also how I first known about Coen Brothers, who are amazing. And actually watched Reservoir Dogs again, which is good. So that's like my introduction. That's 2 years I've been shown. And the French New Wave, Francois Truffaut. Shit, I can't remember the other one. It's really bad movie knowledge. Yeah, so we watched, and great part of that was you're shown so many independent movies and so many foreign movies like from China, and we watched La Haine too, which was very powerful. So you watch movies from China and France. I don't think we got to Italy. I think that country had exploded movie-wise quite at that point. It had by the time I got to university. The breadth of movies even that we watched was great because it was a wonderful class. You weren't forced to say Wong Kar-wai is best director on the planet. You were forced to recognise that he had made movies, that movies were a phenomenon in China, and that you needed to know he existed. But you were never told that you had to love him as director. It's just you need to know about these movies. You need to watch these movies. And then you need to understand that there's movies beyond America and England. America at times, England's movie business at the time was shit. I mean, it's just, you make one good movie in England, even nowadays, one good movie, and everyone makes fucking rubbish rip-offs of it. But forces us to identify with a bunch of different cultures and movies. And I don't like Wong Kar-wai movies very much, I have to say that. I think... it goes back to Audition. I don't think Audition's a bad movie. I don't think any Wong Kar-wai's are bad movies. I'd say I appreciate them, but I can't enjoy them on the level enough people can. It's just where it is. I just feel like, yeah, they're good, they're well made, they're competent, there's some visual flourishes, and he's going for a theme and all that. But the actual gist of what's going on in the movie, I just no interest. Oh, sorry. So that's the theme stage, and it's amazing because that Mrs. Halbert is the reason I got to university in the first place, because I didn't do so great my A levels. I chose history and sociology for some fucking reason. I still don't understand why, to be honest. And I didn't do great in either of those, but she wrote such a good letter to Aberystwyth University, and I got accepted to them. And then I moved off to Wales for a few years, and I had access to means at the time to watch any horror movie I ever wanted to watch. And it's before Shadow, so I won't go into those means. So it's the first time I watched A Nightmare on Elm Street was at university in 2003, and wow, that blew my mind, because I've always been fascinated by dreams and like lucid dreams and how dreams can influence you and your perception, and that movie really hit me. It goes back to what I don't like about Blair Witch. Blair Witch is people getting lost in a wood, which is scary, but at the same time, you chose to go to that fucking wood with two people who didn't know what they're doing and couldn't navigate. So my sympathy for you is not really very high. With something like Nightmare on Elm Street, those kids don't have choice. They try to get out of the situation, but situation's more than they can handle. That's scary to me. Blair Witch 2 is scary to me, where they go to a house and there's nothing wrong or weird about house, but their memories start playing tricks on them. That's messed up. And Nightmare on Elm Street really put that across. And it's one of my favourite horror franchises ever. Actually, jump forward a bit. I watched all Nightmare on Elm Street movies in quick succession. And then this year, I went to see Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 at the Prince Charles Cinema in London, which is, you need to go if you live near London. The Prince Charles Cinema is like independently owned cinema that plays a selection of some new movies, some obscure new movies, but mainly old movies, and it's so good. The audience is really up for it. It's where The Room is played on a weekly basis for audience screenings. And occasionally Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero come by. It's amazing. I've been multiple times. So that really solidified my love for horror movies, because I was like, it's a really genuinely good movie. Like, I love Evil Dead 2. That was fun. And I appreciate Mulholland Drive, but Nightmare on Elm Street was really the first time I watched horror movie, and I was like, because I remember going back to Apollo Video, I'd read all about Freddy Krueger's stuff on boxes, and I was like, how did this live up to it? And then watch this horror movie from years and years and years ago, from the 1980s, and you're like, this is shit, it's gold, Jerry. It's gold. And from there, I'd watched Nightmare on Elm Street series. I watched a bit of Friday 13th, not too much. But the one that I really, really watched was I found Dawn of the Dead. No, Night of the Living Dead, yeah. I found that and I watched that, and then I watched Dawn, and then I watched Day. And I know it's not a trilogy anymore, I know it's a bunch of movies, but I will, until my dying day, maintain that Romero's original three Dead movies, Night, Dawn, Day, are the best trilogy ever made. Stunning. Like, from top to bottom. Like, I love Night. I think Night's a really good movie. Dawn destroys Night. Dawn is like the George Romero's buzz for going mainstream, and it should have gone mainstream. But it's a kind of action movie, but not really. So much character, such great premise, such great themes and thematic concepts, and a really, really an ending that starts dark but then's hopeful. It's bittersweet, which I love, because Night has a happy ending, Dawn's a bittersweet ending, but Dawn's a crowd pleaser, because the pie scene, it's amazing. And at some point I am going to do Dawn of the Dead, but I warn you, I can't be critical of it. I think it's perfect, absolutely perfect movie. And then Day, which is not as fun as Dawn, but Day is a fucking juggernaut of a movie, and the best thing Romero's ever done. Although I haven't watched Martin yet. I've seen Crazies, which I really like, but apparently Martin's his masterpiece, so I have to watch that at some point. And then from there, it was Scream, which I love. I think Scream's a perfect movie. The sequels don't come close. The first Scream is perfect. Didn't watch I Know What You Did Last Summer. I only watched that like last year for the first time. That's fucking rubbish. I mean, I know it's Kevin Williamson, who's a really, really good writer when he's on point. But I Know What You Did Last Summer is rubbish. Absolute shit. To go from Scream to that, I mean, it's a bit like, this is spoilers for Cabin in Woods, so you have 10 seconds to exit out the podcast, and in exactly 2 minutes I'll stop talking about it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Cabin Woods bugged me because all that glorious setup, and they chose like zombies as the bad guys. Just really irritated me. Because you had, and this is essentially what bugs me about I Know What You Did Last Summer. Scream revolutionised the genre. And next year, The Faculty did the same for sci-fi horror movies. Faculty is a wonderful horror movie. And then in between them, I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is a generic horror movie. And there's nothing wrong with generic horror movies, in theory. But coming after Masterpiece of Scream needs it to up your game a bit. You know? And also, another thing that annoyed about Cabin in the Woods is I don't rate it as highly as other people because I think it is a horror movie made by horror movie fans for horror movie fans, but it's a bit smug about horror movies. And while it's very clever, it's not very scary. And also, I think Evil Dead the next year, and it kind of goes against my I Know You Did Last Summer point, but I think Evil Dead the year after played the trope straight and was far better movie than Cabin in the Woods. It's like it disproves Cabin in the Woods' points. It's also the fact that I think Joss Whedon and I think Drew Goddard's a really good director and writer, but I don't think Joss Whedon I don't think he's got that good of a knowledge of horror movies, and I think that seeps through into Cabin in the Woods quite a fair bit. So I don't rate that, but I'm not going to go on a Joss Whedon rant. So university, I don't know. I wasn't. I kind of for a while I went off horror movies a bit because when you're at university and you're in a movies course, and you see a lot of people making terrible fucking horror movies, student horror movies. Oh, they're the worst. They put you right off. And that put me off horror movies for a while. And then when I graduated university, the BA in 2006, for lack of a better word, I drifted for 2 years. I think most people would call it the pseudo-20s depression, where you leave university and if you don't have a concrete job in mind, you drift. And I really did drift for those 2 years until I went back to university and then had the last 2 years, and that's when I joined the Sci-Fi Society, which was it was good. I mean, not horror. I did join a horror society, but they showed Takeshi meets Ishi the Killer. And I think after a few years being out of horror movies, you watch that and you see the pins dug into Guy and all of his flesh. And actually the video we're watching broke, so I just saw that and I was like, I'm out, I'm not watching this. I left. I think nowadays I'll be able to watch it fine, but back then it was like, this is too much. Like, you need to be eased into horror. Actually, no, what I'm talking about, no, that took place the first time I was at university. So I'm getting timelines muddled. It's just like Doc Manhattan in fucking Watchmen, that dirty blue bastard. No, second time at university, because that's the first iteration for the Sci-Fi Society. I don't know why we're watching Icky Killer if it's the Sci-Fi Society, but maybe it's just general movie one. Second time I joined the Sci-Fi Society and watched Being Human, which was fucking rubbish. I hate that show. It's the worst. It's not good sci-fi and it's not good horror. But that's when, yeah, I mean, the second time at university is when I met, uh, I met some great people who I got back into watching horror movies because it became really more of a social activity. Because for a long time, horror movies were a one person sort of activity, mostly, and occasionally more than that, but mostly one, because some of my favourite experiences watching horror movies have been that. Like, for example, the first time I watched Candyman, the incredible Tony Todd movie, and I watched it at home when my parents were out, and I turned all the lights out and watched it, and it freaked the shit out of me in a way that stuff like Final Destination didn't, because Candyman was just A, stunningly violent, and B, the jump scares were actually jump scares. And also Patricia Arquette and Tony Todd. I mean, when your fucking horror movie cast has Patricia Arquette and Tony Todd both on form, you know you're in for a goddamn great movie. Because Patricia Arquette is legitimately one of the best actors of any sex on the planet. She is so good in Boyhood. Boyhood is, by the way, something I'm thankful for my movie course and Miss Albert, because I wouldn't have watched Boyhood if I hadn't gone through that course. And Boyhood and Lady Bird, I love watching movies, and I love the whole aesthetic of it. But those two movies just make me feel like we as a human race, as a collective human race, a lot of times we make, and I know I do it for this podcast, I do an episode a week and I love it. I really appreciate it. But sometimes they're not going to be winners. Like American Psycho, I love the bit at the end where I'm doing the reading of the book, but I don't think the review's very good. But you have to put it out. You do not get better unless you keep making stuff, and it's not all going to win. But Boyhood, Lady Bird, fucking hell, man. Like, that's a win for humanity as far as I'm concerned. Lady Bird, the scene where her mother drops her off and drives back round, and it's like a one shot of Lauren Metcalf, and oh my god, like, you just want to show that to everyone and be like, this is fucking acting, this is what a fucking movie should be. And same Boyhood, like, there's so many scenes in that movie. Like, last scene of that movie where he's met up with someone a woman he's going to college with, and the audience knows that woman is someone he met as a teenager, and they don't know that, and they're just sat there chilling out on top of a cliff, doing drugs, and you're just watching, sort of like, oh my god, it's such a beautiful image and to end on. Sorry, I'm wearing up actually, Jesus Christ. But movies have that power. Not really horror movies, because like I've watched some shit already, but at the same time I've watched some great stuff, and I think horror movies from quite not a relatively early age. I liked them at 15, but honestly, it's since 2008 that it's gone fucking supernova. Partly because Aberystwyth University is this thing called Abattoir, where it's like a week-long celebration of horror movies, in which that's the first time I watched a Grindhouse movie called Pieces, and oh man, like, I'm gonna get Pieces at some point. It is the most fun you'll ever have watching a horror movie. It is terrible and wonderful and bad at the same time, but it's great. It's so much fun to watch. And it's like, yeah, the friends I made in university in like 2008, there's still friends nowadays, and actually, be honest, ulterior motives, main reasons for doing the podcast, one of the reasons was the sheer joy I have when, like, me and those friends discussing horror movies or watching horror movies together is what I want to put out there. I just thought the past 10 fucking years, 10 years I've been watching really, really getting super into horror movies. I want to put that out there. I want to put that out to podcasts. And I like to think I've kind of succeeded, because I watch stuff like Honeymoon and I'm like, I have to share this. Like, it just works. Honeymoon to me is the best thing I've done so far on this podcast. It's just magic, which naturally means it's the one people are listening to least, because that's how it works. What I like and what I think's great is rarely what correlates with you guys, but that's fine. That's the magic of it. You know, it's a middle ground. Like American Psycho has 17 fucking hits. Listens. According to Anchor, it might have more otherwise. I don't know how their system works. But I'm like, how the fuck? That's the worst one. How does that have so many listens? And I know why. It's because people probably get to the bit end with the book reading, and that's the bit they love. That's great. I love that too. But the actual episode's pretty shoddy. And then Some Flesh Eaters is like 31 as of today, which is the 14th of October 2018. And I'm like, well, how fuck? Like, I like that one, but that one's literally just me splurting out shit. So maybe that's what people like. Maybe my passion for Some Flesh Eaters supersedes the fact that it's not a very good episode. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm saying it's weird what people like and what they don't like, but that's what makes doing podcasts fascinating. Sorry. So anyway, that's 2008. After I finished university again, 2010, I drifted again. I wouldn't say depression, because I think that I don't like that term, and I feel like, well, I mean, I'm a strange guy. I tend to sometimes have the attitude of diagnosing mental conditions is great, but sometimes it feels like it defines someone. And I think, for me, and I'll go, it's quite personal to talk about, for me it's more a case of, I have my foibles, I have my good days and bad days, but I like who I am. I really do. I feel like I'm glad I'm doing this podcast. I'm writing more. I'm getting out more. I have a stable job. I have good friends. I have a great family. And yeah, there's things I want, but I feel like if you want something, you have to go for it. And if you spend all your time worrying about depression or anxiety or anything like that, or letting it define you, you're not really going to get anything done. And maybe other people have different attitude, I don't know. But I don't really have much time to think about it. My attitude's like, I will just keep going until I can't go anymore. Pretty much. I mean, I've had a cold for like 6 weeks at this point, on and off, and like, that's not going to fucking stop me. But also, I think those years after I finished university second time, before I got my current job, I wasn't in the best place. And there were times I was quite beaten down. Even after getting this job, first year and a half was really tough. But now I'm in a place where I feel I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy. There's things I want, like just said, but I'm going to get them because I have purpose now. It took me a long time to get to making this podcast, a longer time than I would have liked. But for someone who's always been striving to be a creative guy and write and make product, this podcast is one of the highlights of my week, because I get to create something every week. I mean, I've been talking for 43 minutes at this point about ostensibly nothing, about myself and my life for 43 minutes and how I got to this podcast. And haven't even got on to what podcast is meant to represent, really, yet. I've alluded to it. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people don't make a podcast because they think I'm not interesting enough, or my life isn't interesting enough, or I have nothing to say. And to those people, I say, bullshit. You want to make a podcast? Make a fucking podcast. If you're worried that no one's going to listen, who gives a shit? Seriously, who cares? Once this is out there, it's out there. If people want to listen to it, they can. If they don't, they don't. But at some point, you'll have enough out there, and if someone does listen, if someone likes it, that they'll keep listening. I've done 10. This is my 11th episode overall, 8th week episode list. If someone starts now, they have 11 go through. If by the end of that 11 they still like what I'm saying, they will wait for the next one. If they don't, they'll be out shortly. My first episode is 31 listens. My next highest is 17. So, and that 17 was 5 episodes, was about 6 episodes later. So, you know, it's like, really, people get too worked up over, oh, no one's going to listen, I shouldn't do it. Just do it anyway. Do it for yourself. Do it because you love it. I love horror movies. I love discussing horror movies. And and that's what I do. Weekly, I'll watch something on Shudder and I'll discuss it, except for this week, which is a bit different, granted. And at the same time, like, I made this happen. You know, I create this, I put this out, but at the same time, I promote it, I work hard at it. I constantly come up with ideas for it. And at the same time, I actually went Shudder and thought, maybe they won't approve of it. Fuck it, I'll try anyway. They did approve. And now some lovely guys there follow me on Twitter. Which is great. It's like, I'm not asking them to throw me a check. I would say no. I'm just saying, you know, they supported it. They don't have to, but if I hadn't asked, they wouldn't. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. And that ties us full circle back to this podcast. What is this podcast designed to achieve? It's designed to achieve the feeling I had watching Pieces back in 2008, where I watched a movie that was terrible with a lot of people. I shared that experience with them in a real-time setting. Loved it, great experience. And I thought, why not try something like that nowadays? And the Shud Horror app was the only option for me. And I was like, if I love horror movies and I love discussing them, and I don't always discuss them on a daily basis, but sometimes I'll Skype with friends in another country, I'll watch a terrible movie and we'll have a laugh about it. And that's great. We share that experience. Why not pass that on to other people I don't know? Why not talk about these terrible horror movies with a wider audience? And hopefully I'm trying to get those friends to appear on one of these future podcasts. Touch wood. And it's just me thinking, why not just do that? And I do that. And I create this every week. And at the same time, this model is designed the way that WWE Network works now. Because, spoiler, I'm a huge wrestling fan. And not in that douchebag online, oh, well, I hate the WWE because, like, that's the big thing, man. I gotta support independence. You know? Or you could shut the fuck up and just watch everything. Like, I tried to watch all wrestling because I think calling yourself fan of wrestling means that you enjoy or know about all wrestling. It's not, oh, I watch everything except this one because fuck them, they make money, they're a business, and I can't support them, but I'll support New Japan Pro Wrestling because that's not a business. That's a bunch of people doing shit for no reason. And I'm not criticising New Japan. I love New Japan, but it's all a business. It's all to make money. And while WWE is pretty scummy, they're all really scummy if we're honest. I mean, wrestling's scummy in general, but that's a tangent. The point I'm trying to make, and I'm making really awkwardly, is that I won't do this WWE Saturday Night Live model with more WWE, where Raw has been running for SmackDown has been running for 1,000 episodes as of this week, I think. And I don't know if I'm going to get to 1,000 episodes, but I fucking want to do one a week until I either quit or naturally finishes. And given how many movies on Shudder, I think I've got a fair way to go from that. Oh, right, sorry. I forgot to mention, reason it's a podcast is because of 2 podcasts. Fucking old OSW Wrestling and Attitude Era. And right, this is the point where I'm going to start well up again, because I cannot stress how those 2 have literally become like habit viewing for me. OSW is just so utterly inspiring, you know, because Jesus, because it's three guys. It's just three guys talking about wrestling. And just having a laugh. Just talking about wrestling, having a laugh. But poking fun at it, but still loving it at the same time. And A, I love that. So I'm nostalgic. I know all the references they're making. And B, they're a bunch of guys who make jokes about wrestling. And great, don't get me wrong, great critical points about wrestling. But then they'll make jokes about Frasier, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and The Simpsons. And I'm watching, I'm thinking, these are three guys you would know as, like, who you would know in real life. Normal guys. Making a fucking amazing podcast once a month. And that was inspiring. The others are the Attitude Era podcast. Same thing. Wonderful podcast. Like, about the Attitude Era of wrestling, which was 1990... kind of 97, kind of 96, but mainly 98, 2001. Wonderful podcast. But at the same time, three really, don't get me wrong, really, the three on SW and three on Attitude Era, they're all six of them are really sharp, really funny, really witty, really creative, really smart people. But at the same time, they're guys making podcasts. And when they started, they didn't know it's going to be a success. They just knew we want to do this because we feel we have something to say. People listen great. If they don't, we're still going to do it. And years later, they have patrons, they have merchandise, they have fucking live tours. I went to see Attitude Era at King's Place in London and it fucking blew me away. It literally blew me away. And that was like getting us thinking, at some point, when I make this podcast, I'd love to earn some money for it. But at the same time, I just love doing it. I just love talking about horror movies, as I've proven, because I could not only talk about horror movies for over an hour and a half, as I proved with Zombie Flesh Eaters, and 2 hours is proved with 1 hour 50 is proved with Audition. 50 minutes I can spend talking about my podcast and my life. It barely touched the fucking ground of it, you know, the meat of it. I'm only alluding to a lot of shit. And especially after seeing the Attitude Era live, and after seeing that show and seeing reaction to it, and my own reaction to it, at King's Place, which is a wonderful place. It's like London Podcast Festival. And leaving there and being like, yeah, I'm going to fucking get there someday I'm going to get there podcast. Well, not even I'm going to get there, just I won't get there. And that's true. I want to be at London Podcast Festival at some point, and at the same time, I want to go to Abertoir in Aberystwyth. I want my podcast to go there and want to record an episode there. So that's my goals. So, and this is the 11th episode, the fucking milestone episode, because like Spine Taps to take up to 11. I would like to say the most sincere thanks to everyone who's listened up to this point, because this has literally been one of the best things I have ever done in my life. And I'm very grateful that I've got this far. And I would just like to say that the next milestone, well, there's a lot of milestones, but the next milestone is 89 more episodes away. Because I am getting to episode 100. The total episode 100. And the week's episode 100. And I would just... yeah, I cannot express how grateful I am that I have this platform. Grateful to Anchor for providing podcasts. Grateful to iTunes for fucking improving this shit and getting on iTunes. Grateful for everyone who listens or who shares or who retweets. Just so grateful in so many ways, so many people. Grateful for my friends for just inspiring me to create this content by being so supportive. Grateful to all terrible movies I've seen. Oh shit, you rung up. Be grateful for my family for supporting this, and also grateful to the Now We're Talking podcast. It's a wonderful fucking podcast. You should follow it. It's on Twitter and on iTunes, and just grateful because they retweet and like stuff constantly, and they're a fucking lovely bunch of guys who are very receptive to supporting, and also if I ever need any advice or anything like that, they'll give me advice, so I'm grateful to them. And also, I am grateful to Shudder in general, because I think it's not only a wonderful app run by wonderful people, but it's something I would have loved to have had in years gone by. And it also feels full circle. I had Apollo Video as my gateway into horror movies, which was the video shop of looking at boxes and seeing what's on there. And now, 20 years later, Jesus Christ, 20 years later, fucking hell. 20 years later, I have Shudder, which has almost not every horror movie ever made, but a lot of them, and a lot of movies that I would not have ordinarily got a chance to see. So, thanks Shudder, love you guys, and I will be back next week with something different. It may be Grave Encounters, it may not, I will let you know. But until then, remember, life is beautiful.